Appreciate you guys joining in. Breaking news happening. Iran has fired multiple missiles towards Jordan, hitting Muwafiq Salti Air Base in Jordan. At least one or two positive hits. CENTCOM confirmed these strikes came from Iran. In addition to that, they claim that they stopped all of the missiles and drones, but we know and we've got visuals of positive hits pertaining to these strikes by Iran. We also got major explosions happening in Iraq. A lot of the PMF strongholds. Right now, there is explosions heard in Suwaida area of Iraq. Another attempted strike at the PMF barracks in Wasit. Iraq is subjected to military aggression from Saudi Arabia, so that may be by the Saudis or it may be by the United States of America. But quite clearly, as I mentioned, the Saudis are afraid to go against Ansarullah, so they've tried to go for the Iraqi resistance. We've got visuals of major explosions in Basra, and we also have unidentified jets over the Babel province in Iraq. Initially, Saudi is attacking, so it claims that Saudi is attacking them, but obviously we'll continue to give you the news as and when we and Suwaida region. So we'll continue to give you the news as and when we receive it. Jim, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Give us your thoughts about the breaking news before we talk about the wider issues.
Yeah, well, this is the first I've heard about it. As I just told you, I've been 3 hours at the Odyssey today. So we've got Iran attacking again sites in Jordan, bases in Jordan, and Saudi Arabia apparently attacking PMF sites in Iraq.
That's right.
Well, this war is not going quiet, and Iran certainly is acting proactively and not sitting back. And what one was, I don't say worried about, what one was thinking about is, if Iran is just sitting back, said, well, to the Americans, if you don't strike us, we won't strike you. And then you've got this whole kind of long tit for tat, but the Americans really control when it happens or not. Well, if Iran is saying, no, we're gonna hit when we want, where we want, that's very powerful. And what they've done is they really chased the Americans out of the Persian Gulf bases, and now they've gone into Jordan. And so now they hit Jordan, and this is a very assertive, not to say aggressive, posture by Iran. They know this war isn't over. They know they can't just sit back and let things relax for a while. They were all of the military experts that I've seen, and and mainstream outlets from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to the Telegraph are talking about how the Americans have emptied their armories of precision missiles, both offensive and defensive, anti-aircraft and precision strike missiles, and that they really can't. This report, which I think is extremely credible, that the reason Trump pulled back was because he was told, we can't last very long. We don't have the missiles to do this, and they can't replace them. They make like 200 Patriot missiles a year. It's going to take years to replace, to fill up the magazines again. So, the Iranians are in a good position, and they're going to use it, I guess. It's really, we're in a very, very, very difficult situation, with the Ukrainians hitting the Iranian ship. I guess that's been calmed down a little bit, but that was another flashpoint that, clearly Zelensky was playing a little game for Trump where, look, I'm with you. We're both against Iran. So it's just a very, very dangerous game. And what bothers me the most is that sitting back and watching this are the Israelis, who are continuing to do what they want. They're bragging about blowing up whole villages in Lebanon. We watch these videos of them blowing up schools and blowing up whole villages. And Katz gets up and says, yeah, we've already blown up 20, 40,000 homes, and we do it all at once. We blow up a whole village at once. We don't just do it one place at a time. We blow up a whole village all at once. And they're bragging about it. They're bragging about having destroyed Gaza and they're getting away with it. So this is the difficulty. We have different, kind of overdetermined fight here. There's a fight between the United States and Iran, which is really a secondary fight, which is not a secondary fight, but it is something that's on top of the basic struggle here, which is a struggle for Zionism to get rid of its main opponent here, which is what it considers Iran. It considers Iran the backbone of the remaining axis of resistance, and it is. So that we don't know what's going to happen with that. We do see that Iran is standing up and fighting back, not just fighting back. They are saying we're going to go on the offensive to a certain extent, and that's good. But someone's got to go on the offensive against Israel at some point directly. So anyway, that's Saudi Arabia is everybody's in trouble here. Everybody's in trouble. The Americans are in trouble. The Israelis are in trouble. The Saudis are in trouble. Iran is in trouble. There's a serious, everybody's under the gun and being hit various ways. But in terms of the kind of larger strategic picture, Iran has a very good position.
Now, what's the reason why you think that? I'm trying to fathom what's happened today, because I've interviewed a number of officials in Iran. I've interviewed a number of people from Iran. And their stance has always been like, we won't attack, we're going to be defensive, to the point where I'm always like, strike. Like, it is defensive. Anything after February the 28th is defensive. Now we've seen these strikes. It seems like there's only two, well, there could be more, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. The two possibilities I can think of, but I want to hear some from you, is one is they were aware about a major strike coming from the US using Muwafiq Salti Al Air Base, and I was hearing murmuring, that something may be happening from Wednesday onwards. They wanted to get the Lindsey Graham funeral over and then possibly do something. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that Iraq, as we know, that the Saudis got hit by Ansarullah. They tried to blame the Iraqi resistance because they don't want to go against Ansarullah. Maybe the Iranians said, look, you can't strike the Iraqi resistance. This is just fake news. And if you do, there will be consequences. And then they've struck the Iraqi resistance. And this is why, because we're seeing major explosions happening in Iraq right now. Those are only the two possibilities. There could be more. They're the two I've quickly thought about. But what's your thoughts about unless they've changed their posture as well? So what's your thoughts about what it could be?
I really don't understand what Saudi Arabia thinks it's going to get by striking the Iraqi PMF forces. I don't understand what they think that's going to do for them. And you're implying, and I think that's reasonable implication, that they're doing it because they're afraid to strike Ansarullah. Well, then what is this doing for them? Ansarullah is still there. Ansarullah can strike Saudi Arabia. They're taking a very assertive posture too. So again, it's hard to know where this is going. As you said, what all of us were worried about is Iran is just being defensive. You don't strike us, we won't strike you. But we got to get beyond this point. This is the problem in these two great conflicts in the world today. You really need a decisive battle that's going to end this kind of simmering battle that's going on one way or another. And the most important parts of this simmering battle are not simmering. They're towns and villages being blown up, hundreds of thousands of people being displaced, pogroms in the West Bank, Gaza being turned into a literal concentration camp. They're pushing all the rest of the people of Gaza into barbed wire, into fenced enclosures. And the Americans and the Iranians and the Saudis and Ansarullah are smacking each other back and forth. But, the fundamental problem here, which is the root of all this, is the Zionist Greater Israel Project, which is advancing. So I don't know where this is going to, everybody understands this. I'm sure Iran understands this. And they've got the Americans in a bind because the Americans really are in a strategically weak position. Everybody's got to decide when and how they're going to kind of engage, and whether it's in their interest to preemptively start what would be a decisive battle that we're all sitting back afraid is going to happen and wanting to happen and afraid is going to happen. And it's a very confusing time. And I just, and the nuclear weapons hanging in the background, and we just don't know where this is going to go. You've got complete lunacy in the American administration, which is incompetent and is weaker than, doesn't understand. Maybe it is getting to understand its own weakness and the strength of its adversary, in this case, Iran. But all of it is very dangerous. And we have to see what's going to happen.
And that's the so obviously we've talked about the strikes, and obviously, okay, we've got another piece of breaking news. A second airstrike just struck PMF positions in the Wasit region of central Iraq. There is also an unidentified jet over the Babel province in central Iraq as well. So major explosions happening in Iraq. And this is why I do think that there is a possibility that may have been the reason why Iran struck, but we'll have to wait and see, because this is just speculation on our side. Now, obviously, we'll continue to give you the news as and when we receive it, but just on the wider war, Jim, you just mentioned a few key things. There is Netanyahu. He's just gone to the White House today. He's speaking to Trump, as was Zelensky. And the claim by the New York Post, which, again, I take it with a grain of salt, because the New York Post won't write something as a leak unless it's going to be beneficial for Bibi Netanyahu. But the claim is that Netanyahu was going to go to the White House in order to convince Trump to strike Pickaxe Mountain. What's your thoughts on this?
Extremely credible that he would do that. I think Netanyahu is trying to get Trump into the war as much as possible. He's going to try and, whether it's Pickaxe Mountain or Karg Island or whatever, he's going to try and get Trump to ratchet up the attacks on Iran. He's going to try and persuade him, if we just keep up the pressure. It's hard to understand who in the Trump administration, and whether Donald Trump himself at this point is going to listen to Benjamin Netanyahu. Clearly, what he presented as the outcome of the starting this war in February was wrong, and it's got Trump in a screwed up position. But Trump, and I think that's one of the things interesting, that Zelensky and Netanyahu came kind of back to back to Trump. It's one of the things with the Ukrainians attacking an Iranian ship and then coming to Trump and saying, "Oh, you see, it's the same fight. You got to back us up." And Netanyahu coming and maybe doubling down on that and confirming that and saying, "Look, this is all the same fight. We got to stop this right now." And the case is that, but I don't know what Trump can do. Literally, the Americans are not in a good position militarily. They can strike, they can blow things up. They cannot have a ground incursion. And if Netanyahu is going to try and get Trump to do that, I think he's going to get a lot of resistance now from people like Vance and the American military. Are going to say that's just not plausible, and it's going to destroy you politically to Trump, and Trump is going to be amenable to that. So I don't know what the Americans can do, and I'm sure Netanyahu is going to try and get him to do something. This is what Netanyahu wants. This is what Israel wants. They want the Americans and Iranians to be fighting each other. They want the Americans and Iranians and the Persian Gulf. They want all of these countries in chaos while they go ahead and do their thing, which is blowing up and occupying Lebanon and turning Gaza into a concentration camp. So this is what, as Smotrich said, we don't want to get involved right now. We're happy with the situation as it is. And this is my point. At some point, Israel has to be attacked this directly. They have to take casualties, economic casualties, political casualties, human casualties, soldiers they can't, that's what they can't take. They don't have the manpower to get into a war where they're going to be hit consistently and precisely and in ways that are deadly. And until that happens, they're going to throw all the sand in the eyes of everybody else and get them all fighting with each other. And that's what we're in right now. That's what we're in. And Netanyahu is going to go to Trump and try and get him to do something, because he's going to tell him, "Look, we have to do something. They're going to have a nuclear weapon. You're losing. You're going to be a loser." And Trump, who knows what he's likely to listen to and react to from one day to the next, or one person to the next of whoever he heard from last. And it's just a kind of, we really are in a situation as Americans where we look at our administration and say, this is impossible to understand as a coherent political strategy coming out of this place, or geopolitical strategy. It's really based a lot on how much influence someone like Netanyahu is going to have. Someone like, not so, Zelensky's not going to have that much influence, except it's insofar as it's confirmed by Netanyahu, and what Trump's mood is, and what he thinks he can get away with. But this is a very dangerous situation. It's the United States realizing, if it is realizing, that we are not as strong as we were, and the other side is not as weak as we thought we were. We have been for 30 years being able to, shock and awe people into doing what we want and being intimidated and going along with it. And we've realized, and we should realize now, that that's not working right now, and it's not going to be working. So I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But there has to be a fight. There has to be a fight.
We're also hearing air strikes targeting military headquarters in El Der, Wasat, the governor, and Basra, southern Iraq. This is being reported by Al Mayadeen. Now, obviously, Zelensky was there as well. So I'm just reading it. Saudi aggression with American support. This is the claim as well. So we're getting multiple various reports saying, some saying it's Saudi, some saying it's the US. Obviously, we'll continue to give you that news. Guys, make sure you like this video and try and get as many people in here as possible. After Jim will be jumping on the space and continuing on with this conversation. But I guess the question here is, why do you think Zelensky's there as well? Do you think this is to try and bring support back for him? He obviously did a big propaganda tour, brought a lot of Zionists across. What do you think his reasoning is for being in the White House?
Yeah, he wants American support. He wants European support. He wants the Americans back in it, not that they're out of it entirely, but he wants more weapons and more money from the Americans. And he's trying to tie himself into Zionists, into Israel, and saying, and so, and he's getting, again, they're keeping the war going. The drones he's getting from the Europeans are keeping the war going, keeping his war going, and he wants to tie it in to the American-Israeli-Iran war and make it all part of the same project that Trump is invested in. It's so I don't know to what extent that can work. Is Trump cottoning up to Zelensky again? Maybe he is. He wasn't very happy with Zelensky for a long time, but Zelensky's now got this narrative going with the American and Western press, and with the drone strikes, they've had some success with that. They've struck targets. They have, dramatic pictures of burning oil installations and warehouses and Amazon warehouses, their version of Amazon. But again, in the background, not the background, on the ground, the Russians are advancing steadily and relentlessly in the north of Ukraine, in the region around Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, and so the Russians are still advancing. They're winning the war on the ground, and the Ukrainians are able to demonstrate they've been given weapons and intelligence and targeting from the Europeans and the Americans that are allowing them to strike targets in Russia that they hadn't struck before. But it's just, again, it's dangerous. The Russians have to put an end to it, and they know this. I think the Russians know they're going to have to have it, and I think they do have a strategy to put an end to the Zelensky regime and to the post-Maidan regime in Ukraine. That's the only way that this is going to stop. And that's, on the other side, the only way it's going to stop is to put an end to the Zionist Greater Israel Project. And it's hard to figure out how to do that it's impossible to figure out how to do that without getting involved in a serious war battle that's going to take everybody's going to take a lot of hits. I'm very surprised if it's the case that Saudi Arabia has made the decision to go that far in to the war with the Americans by hitting targets in Iraq. You know, Saudis, of course, like to be careful and play the game and not get hurt. They're not very brave, and you know, if they're going all in against the PMF forces in Iraq, well, I'm very surprised at that, and that's something Iran again and everybody, Iran, Ansarallah, they all have to take account of the various fronts in the war. That's then the Saudis with the Americans saying, okay, if Iran is going to be aggressive and going to be preemptive and going to strike, we're going to open a new front for them, a new front. This is again getting rid of all of the axis of resistance, and that's what it's about. And the Iraqi PMF and Ansarallah and Hezbollah and Iran, those are the axis of resistance now. So everything in the Middle East, from Iraq to Libya to Syria, is about getting rid of the axis of resistance, getting rid of material, military, political, and diplomatic support for the Palestinian resistance. And so so Saudi Arabia is going all in on that with the Americans by opening up a new front in Iraq. I'm a little surprised at that. That's more bold than I think the Saudis would be. And they're going to get hit. Iranians will hit back, won't they? I mean, I would think. And Ansarallah will hit back. Do they really think that the Iraqi PMF is behind Ansarallah in some way? I mean, I don't know. That's very silly, but maybe they are. I mean, maybe they're giving more support to Ansarallah than I'm aware of. But there's going to be more war. What can I say?
Exactly. We've got some more breaking news. The first one is jet activity is reported over the far north as the Nineveh governor in Iraq. The US and Saudis are launching joint airstrikes on the pro-Iranian PMF positions in Iraq.
So that's now confirmed as U.S. Saudi airstrikes.
Yeah, I just had a statement as well, and I don't know where I've put it is. US. So this is it. The US announces its aggressive strikes on Iraq. Obviously, I thought Saudi doing it on their own is highly improbable because they're a very weak, inept nation. So this is what it says. It's quote. U.S. Central Command and the Saudi Arabian Armed Forces conducted precision strikes in Iraq on July 28th against Iran-aligned terrorists directed by the IRGC to attack U.S. forces and Saudi energy infrastructure. U.S. and Saudi fighter jets struck several terrorist logistics and weapon sites across eastern Iraq in a strong response to more than 30 IRGC-directed drone attacks in the past 72 hours. The unprovoked attacks against U.S. forces were not successful. From February to April 2026, there were more than 600 attempted attacks on U.S. citizens and facilities by Iran-aligned terror militias in Iraq. The IRGC and its terrorist proxies must stop these attacks to avoid further U.S. military response. And so that is the statement that's come out. Quite clearly, this was a joint Saudi-American strike. And it does seem like this is why Iran struck, right? This is becoming more and more likely that it was the reasoning for it. And it just shows the inept nature of the Saudis, that they can't do anything on their own without the support of the Americans. But the second thing is, this is just an illusion and a delusion, because in reality, Ansarullah are the ones who struck in. Now, I know they're saying it's because of the drones that were struck over the last there was 20 plus drones that were struck by the Iraqi resistance on Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Jordan. But quite clearly, it was the more successful strikes were done by Ansarullah, and the Saudis tried to blame the Iraqi resistance for it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's very plausible what you're saying, that it was Ansarullah who was really the backbone of the attack and the main forces of the attack. But the Saudis and the Americans are going after, and this has announced joint operation with Saudi and the United States. So this is Saudi putting itself in the direct alliance with the United States in a war against Iran and against, again, all of the resistance forces in the region, and very boldly making it, let's go. We'll come with you and bomb the Iraqi PMF Now, I don't know, as you say, if they're fighting Ansarallah, unless Ansarallah has been a lot more dependent on the support of the Iraqi PMF than I'm aware of, they're not going. This is just widening the war. This is widening the war, and in a non-decisive way. Okay, I don't think that the attacks on Iraqi PMF are going to be decisive about this. But again, the main force on the other side is Iran. They're going to have to decide how to respond to this. Are they going to hit Saudi Arabia again? Are they going to hit the American bases in Jordan, American bases in Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabian oil infrastructure? You know, Iran has to decide whether it's going to ratchet it up, not just sit back and wait to get struck, but ratchet it up and force them to use whatever little weapons they have left, whatever, not little weapons, but the limited amount of weapons they have left. And Saudi Arabia is making a decision here. I haven't seen Saudi Arabia be this aggressive, and stating its intention to be part of the military apparatus of this war. And so what's Iran going to do about it? Everybody's in a tough position. They have to make a decision about this. I suspect that Iran will hit Saudi Arabia. There's no ceasefire. They can't pretend there's a ceasefire unless the United States attacks us. That's the defensive position that is going to harm them in not only the long run, but in the short and medium run. They've got to say, this is a war, and we have to continually not only defend our position, but strengthen our position and advance our position and make sure that we don't allow them to eat away on the edges of our position, and to a point where we're going to turn around one day and say, oh, we're 20% weaker than we were 2 months ago. Okay. They've got to say, we want to be 20% stronger 2 months from now than we are now. And they can't let the Americans and the Saudis attack Iraqi bases, I guess. But, this is again, anybody who thinks that the Americans lost the Iraq war, they did not. The Americans won. The Americans and Israelis won the Iraq. They got what they wanted from the Iraq war. No matter what kind of defeat it was, the Americans left. They don't care. What they got was an Iraq which is out of the axis of resistance. They got an Iraq which is entirely controlled by the United States. They got to send all their oil revenues to the Treasury and get doled out what they want. This is a success. Every one of these wars that were, this is crazy, this is failure, this is a senseless war in Iraq, senseless war in Libya, senseless war, not senseless. The people who wanted that war got what they wanted from them, which was destroying those countries as coherent states and as military, coherent and strong military actors, and as supports of the axis of resistance. That was the point of it. It had nothing to do with the United States. From the point of view of an American citizen, didn't do anything for us. It was silly. It was senseless. From the point of view of the Zionist project, it was a success. And so that's what, again, this just demonstrates that for the axis of resistance to win, they have to get rid of the Americans in Iraq in a way that they haven't yet. They didn't. And this is a wide war. And you can, but I hope if you go back to the position, okay, Iran, we're protected, they're not going to attack us, we can defend ourselves, and let everybody else get wiped out gradually or systematically, or then at the end of the day, you're not in a stronger position, you're in a weaker position. And the only way to avoid that is to fight. This is one of these things when you fight is necessary.
Now, we've got some more breaking news, which is the Saudi and U.S. forces strike the north of Babel province, central Iraq. U.S. and Saudi attacked the Naviva countryside in northern Iraq. And you guys don't know this. I didn't really tell anyone this, but I was going back to the Middle East. I was actually going to go to central Iraq. So this is quite shocking to see that this is happening right now. Anyway, Saudi armed forces this is what the Saudi Ministry of Defense said. They said the Saudi armed forces, in coordination with the U.S. Central Command, conducted precise and targeted strikes against objectives belonging to those militias located on the territory of the Republic of Iran and linked to the attacks on the petroleum facilities in the kingdom. So that's false. The petroleum facilities were taken out by Ansarullah, but obviously the Saudis know they can't take on Ansarullah. The kingdom emphasizes that it does not seek escalation, but will respond to any aggression it faces. There's also U.S. Saudi attacks on the Naviva countryside in northern Iraq as well. I mean, we've also got reports that there are renewed strikes on Nineveh region in northern Iraq. So these strikes continue. Guys, make sure you like this video. Let's try and get as many people in here.
I just want to make clear, you that was a mistake when you said Republic of Iran. You meant Republic of Iraq, right?
So yeah. Did I say Iran got struck? No, it was Iraq. It was Iraq.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
So I'd be very, very surprised if Saudi Arabia carried out attacks directly on Iran.
Yeah. No, you're right. If I said Iran, it's not. It's Iraq. Thanks for
clarifying. This is a bold move. This is a flanking move by the Americans to create a new front that Iran has to make a decision about. Okay, the PMF in Iraq is a good force. They're a strong force, but they're not going to do it on their own. None of these forces are going to do it on their own. It's like Hezbollah. It's a good force, a strong force. Can't do it on its own. The backbone of this is Iran, and that's what they know, and that's why they're after Iran. So they're forcing Iran to make a decision about what they're going to do about this. And, America's depleted its arsenal of precision weapons and missiles and rockets. They're trying to force Iran to deplete their arsenals as much as possible in a way that's not directed at the central target, which is Israel. So that's what they're doing. We can't be, all of the military planners involved, whatever we think of Trump, and he is stupid and doesn't understand what's going on, and a lot of people, but the military planners and the Israeli military planners in this are not stupid, and they know what they're doing, and they're going to try and figure out a way. Okay, we know we don't want to get into a fight with Iran right now. So what are we going to do? We're going to get in a fight with. We're going to start attacking. The PMF can't stop American air power. They can't stop F-35 jets. They don't have advanced air defenses. They don't have what Iran has. They can't. They don't have this precision strike missiles that Iran has to strike back. So we're going to force Iran to make a decision. Are they going to come to the defense and the aid of the PMF in Iraq by attacking Saudi Arabia? So blowing up the whole region, creating a situation Iran would have liked, still would like. Oh, we can get along with Saudi Arabia. That's what was happening. That the Americans and the Israelis are putting an end to that. Now there's a battle, and it's across the region, and everybody in the region is forced to make a decision and get involved. Whose side are you on? And we want to see you show whose side you're on by joining with us in attacks on this or that target. And I guess that's what the Saudis are doing on Sarallah. I don't know. What's Iran's response going to be? Iran is, it's in a good position in the sense what it's fought itself to a very strong position against the United States per se, but it's also in a very difficult position. It's got to decide how to proceed, and there's no way of doing it that doesn't involve conflict, serious conflict that's going to hurt them in some way or another. And everybody else in this region has to do that too. Now they have to decide how they're going to proceed. And the Persian Gulf states, they would have liked to kind of been able to stay out of it and let everybody else fight it out. And as long as guess that's not happening anymore. Saudi Arabia is getting right in it with the Americans.
We also have more reports of renewed strikes in Aun, Karbala region, central Iraq. As you know, Karbala is where there is right now a huge number of pilgrims that have congregated together in order to basically do pilgrimage. It's their holy day, or a holy few days. Arba'in. A large number of pilgrims are going to be there. I'm gonna be there as well. So this is crazy. I was meant to be there today, but my visa didn't go through yet. So this is major strikes happening in Karbala as well. So the strikes are happening in major, and the issue is when these strikes are happening in Iraq, you have to remember, I believe there's already 250,000 or even 500,000 pilgrims who've already gone there, and people are moving towards there. So the chances of mass casualty are significant. So it just once again demonstrates the American-Israeli way, right?
That's a Shia? Is that a Shia pilgrimage?
It is, yeah. I'm not Shia myself, so I'm not an expert on Shia theology.
But the Karbala pilgrimage is Shia pilgrimage. So
yeah.
this is the point. They're sticking it in the eye of Iran. They're telling Iran, look, because Iran, who do I see talking about that on Larry Johnson the other night? This guy Robert Barnes, who was an old friend of Trump's, actually was talking about it. But he was saying, the polling in the Middle East shows that Iran is very popular among the Shia population of the Middle East in general now. And certainly in Iraq, that was one of the things. Some of the American geopolitical people, when they did the war against on Iraq, were saying, "What are you, crazy? You get away Saddam Hussein, you're gonna make Iran stronger." And that was part of the realist Americans were saying, we don't want to weaken Iraq and that just leaves Iran in a stronger position, and they have the influence among the Shia population in Iraq. So this is what they're playing the game now. They're saying to Iran, look, we're going to attack the religious, it's like attacking the funeral of the Ayatollah. We're going to attack the Karbala pilgrimage. What are you going to do about that? And again, these are flanking maneuvers, as I said. They're really, the nub of the issue is, what is Israel doing? Where's the Zionist project going? Is it embedding it? Is it enforcing itself, reinforcing itself, advancing, or is it under threat? And right now, it's advancing. And while all of this is going on behind it, and that's not an accident. So I'm upset by it. I'm really upset by it, because what's happening is we need a military intervention in this space, that probably even more than Iran. This is the point. This is not going to stop without a big fight. That a lot of people are going to get hurt very badly, and the side that gets hurt the most is going to have to stop. And nobody's quite ready to pull that trigger, but sooner or later it's going to have to happen.
Yeah. I could just see some of the comments here. Don't go, Sully. Listen, everyone knows I've been covering the Middle East for a while, and I do think it's important to be on the ground as well. So I will be going to Iraq. Yeah. I'll be going back to Iran, and I'm planning to go to Russia as well. So it's important to give the real news on the ground, because that's how you get the real news. And because I'm impartial, I'm not a Shia. I'm not from Iran. I'm not from Iraq. I'm not Russian. I'm not like pro-Russia in the sense of, being pro-Russia or whatever. So completely independent. So I always think those type of people, it's important to give you guys the real news and real information on the ground. So we will be providing that to you on the ground. So just pray for your boy. I'm getting a bit concerned, I'll be honest with you.
I second the comment saying, don't go. This is not the time to go.
I appreciate that, Jim. So going back to the conversation that we're talking about. So you obviously believe that Iran should be a lot more aggressive in their actions. And so let me just talk about one thing. So obviously you know that I talked to a number of officials in Iran. I had the honor of interviewing the foreign minister spokesperson in Iran as well. And the reason I say that is because their position is this, that they see the Arab nations, the Arab countries, as largely being a defense for Israel. So they've been systematically, methodically taking out their defense, whether it's the radar systems or various other things. And you're seeing now, when they strike Israel, they'll basically have a scenario where there'll be, there won't be much defense. And so the reason I say that is because you basically, now Israel is aware they're going to get hit. And so this is why you're seeing the Israelis essentially being really scared to join this war. You saw Smotrich saying we leave it to the Americans and the Iranians. You also mentioned it earlier in the interview as well. And so the reason I bring all of this up is Iran's stance. I mean, I don't agree with this specific element of it. But then they're doing it from a defensive measure. And again, I think the argument is going to be here. This wasn't defense. This was also defense because they attacked Iraqi resistance. But the position is we want Israel to attack us first because we're going to be hitting them up really, really badly. What's your kind of perspective on all that? I kind of understand the Iranian position. I respect it a lot.
Absolutely.
And I understand the moralistic aspect of it. And the position is you do not want to become the evil that you're fighting because then you know, what's the point of fighting? But I just see this as I mentioned earlier, as just all of it being defensive. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Jim.
Well, look, this is exactly. I can't sit here in the United States of America and say, Iran, go attack. You know, I mean, it sounds crazy and it's arrogant, and you know, they're going to pay a price for it, and they are paying a price. But I mean, from a strategic point of view, first of all, I think their strategy so far has been brilliant. As I say, they've taken out the eyes and ears of the Americans, the radar, and the Israelis. They've taken out the radar installations, and then they go after the bases. They're forcing the Americans to take their troops out of these bases and put them in Jordan and Israel. And at the end of the day, they'll go after Jordan. At the end of, I think that is probably part of their strategy. At the end of the day, we'll get the Americans into Israel before we attack Israel, you know, and we'll have them deplete their resources, their military resources as much as possible before we attack Israel. So, you know, this is a sound strategy. It's very good. Reasonably thinking, it's excellent. They've been doing excellent. So I can't sit here and say, well, this is what you should do. But I'm just, you know, I'm watching, you know, the Israelis are advancing, and they're advancing because they're not taking casualties. They're advancing because they're not being hit, and they can put their army in southern Lebanon, and they can put their army in Gaza because they don't have to protect the homeland. So at some point, that's either going to change or it's not, you know. And how is it going to change? It's going to change if the only country that's going to be able to do that is Iran. If Iran strikes Israel, carries out an offensive action against Israel in some way. And I can see from not just a moralistic point of view, from a political, strategic point of view, Iran doesn't want to be the one that's the aggressor. But the aggression is happening now. It's happening in Lebanon. It's happening in Gaza. And I would like to see, tell Iran what to do. Forget it. The world should be acting. The world should be intervening here to stop Israeli genocide and Israeli ethnic cleansing and Israeli colonialism and aggression, which is constant and blatant, and they brag about it. And the impunity of the Israelis is a disgrace on the world. You know, Zionism is the enemy of humanity, and it's a shame on the world that it's being allowed to do this. And it's not up to the Iranians by themselves to do something about it. They're doing what they can, and they're the target. Therefore, they're the target. So, you know, whether I want it or not, what I'm saying is this battle, what it's about is about whether the Zionist project will grow and expand and become stronger, or whether it will be put back in a box at the very least. That's what it's always about. And everything else that's going on around it really is how it affects that. At the end of the day, that essential element of the conflict cannot be addressed without a military confrontation with Israel that defeats Israel, that Israel has to draw back because it cannot afford the losses it's taking. And I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. And, you know, Iran as a country has its own national interests. And that's, you know, what to a certain extent, what the game is being played is, we're not attacking you directly, Iran, you know, so we're attacking here, there, and the other place, and you want to attack us there, and we'll play this game with you, and we'll, you know, we'll have this little tit for tat shooting war, but it's not so little. At some point, again, it's, you know, they want to weaken Iran. They know they can't overthrow the government of Iran. They know almost anything they do militarily, it's to Iran's benefit that this war explodes to a certain extent, that this war becomes more direct. Okay, Iran, that's what they're avoiding. They're avoiding doing something which is going to give Iran the excuse to actually use all its weapons. But can Iran sit back and say, we'll wait till they give us the excuse? I don't know. It's not what I want. It's what I see.
Idris says, I see what's going on here. The US and the Zionists are building a wedge between us Sunnis and our Shia brothers by using Saudi to strike important religious Shia sites. Disappointed in Saudi for allowing itself to be a Zionist tool.
Well, that's what, that's since Seymour Hersh wrote that, revealed that was what happened in Syria. It was the turn to Sunni fundamentalism that was used by the Americans as a wedge to, push the Sunni Arab regimes to actually either ally with or stand back and allow the destruction of, again, the axis of resistance, the various regimes that were the axis of resistance. And absolutely that's what's happening. And there was a coming together. There was a détente between Iran and Saudi Arabia that was being helped by the Chinese. That was happening a couple of years ago. We saw that happening. And that's what they wanted to put it into. They wanted to put it in. And the Iranians would like to have that situation where they're not seen as enemies of Saudi Arabia or enemies of the Arab regimes, even the Arab monarchies. They can get along with them, but they're being told, they don't want to give up their anti-Zionist resistance stance in order to do that. And they don't want to certainly just capitulate, become an Abraham Accord state. That's what the Americans and Israelis want. They want Iran to de facto, if not de jure, capitulate to the Zionist hegemony in the region. And they don't want to do that. And they're adamant about it. And they're really fighting about that right now in a very brave and smart way, I think. But the Americans and Israelis aren't going to give up on pushing them into some position where they're going to do that, even if it means giving other things to the Iranians. They give Saudi Arabia. You can have nuclear enrichment facilities. You can have peaceful nuclear weapons. They're going to say that to Iran. They do the same damn thing. You become an Abraham Accord state, de facto or de jure, and we won't complain about your peaceful nuclear weapons program, and we'll stop. But those are the kinds of decisions. That's the other side of the coin. That's in the background of this. And the Iranians, to get out of this, you've got to defeat the Israelis. The Israelis have to be defeated. And I'm sorry, and I can't sit here and berate Iran for not doing that, because it would be a hell of a fight, and they're going to get smashed. They're going to get really, really seriously hit if they do it. And I berate the rest of the world for sitting back and watching this happen to Iran and to Lebanon and to Gaza and to the world. And I congratulate Iran for being the country that's standing up to this. And I don't know how it's going to proceed. But what we're going to see is, they're going to try and set all the Persian Gulf regimes. If Saudi Arabia is directly fighting now, sending their jets, then the other the monarchies in the region are going to be pushed into they're going to want to go along with Saudi Arabia. So we're in a very, very difficult situation.
No doubt. Great point. And just some more news coming out. The PMF have made a statement. They say the command headquarters was subjected to aerial assaults. Sorry, this is the PMF command in Basra. They said the command headquarters was subjected to an aerial assault at 2 a.m. An hour ago, orders were given to civil aviation to stay away from Dammam, Khobar. An hour ago, orders were given to civil aviation to stay away from Dammam, Khobar, and Kuwait. Then the Popular Mobilization Forces headquarters in Basra were attacked. So seems like there was going to be some drone strikes on Dammam and Khobar in Saudi Arabia and possibly Kuwait as well. 2 people wounded from the PMF fighters. That's what the Iraqi sources are saying. So that's kind of the latest news. Obviously, we'll continue to give you that as and when we receive it. Jim, obviously, you've been very persistent and consistent on the position that the MOU is never going to succeed. I've obviously agreed with you on this. I think you've always been right on this. Going forward, what do you think happens? There was this kind of lull on strikes. Trump did pull back for a bit. What do you think happens next in the kind of more finite future as opposed to long term? I know we both agree MOU is not going to work.
Yeah. I don't know. What can they do? What can you agree to with the Trump administration? What can Iran agree to? I mean, as the Russians said a while ago about the Americans, they're agreement incapable.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the Trump is agreement incapable. He doesn't even understand what he's saying he's agreeing to, and doesn't pay any attention to it. And he'll blow it off the next day if something else comes up that he thinks is going to work for him. So there's no diplomacy with the Americans. Look at the difference between the diplomatic corps of Iraq, of Iran, of Russia, and the diplomatic corps of the United States. I mean, Kushner and Witkoff and J.D. Vance. I mean, these are lightweights, is giving them too much credit. And again, because fundamentally underneath it, and Trump is the blatant version of it, because really, the Americans have never thought they actually have to abide by agreements they made. Look at what's happened in Russia with Ukraine. They didn't abide by the agreement they made with the Soviet Union to not advance one inch to the east after Germany was reunited. They didn't abide. They didn't care. They didn't abide by the agreements they made in Ukraine to have a new election and let there be a new election. The next day there was a coup in Ukraine that they supported. They didn't abide by the Minsk Agreement 1 or the Minsk Agreement 2. So this is, they always thought that it was not as blatant and as really ugly as in rhetorical terms as Trump is, but really the American polity, the American regime, everybody from Bush to Obama to Biden thought, well, we'll make these things and we'll try and keep them. But really, if at the end of the day we don't want to keep it, we want to, we'll figure out it. We'll make an excuse for it, and we'll break it. We'll break the agreement. Now it's just blatant. Now it's just obvious. From literally one day to the next, we'll break the agreement. We won't even know. I'll act not acting like I don't even understand what's in it, but I didn't understand what was in it, and so I'll just do what I want to do. So I don't understand what ceasefire, what agreement, who is going to monitor the agreement. You have to look at the language of the agreement would have to be extremely precise, and not allow any wiggle room for the Americans to say, oh, well, we said you could control this, or we implied that you could control the strait, but really we just want to take this little trip around the island on the other side, and that's not for you to control. That's for Oman to control. So this is, we have to have, anything would have to be explicit in detail, and there'd have to be some mechanism for enforcing it other than just attacking, just, saying, you do this, we're going to attack ships. You do this, we're going to attack your bases. So there's no arbitration system set up within an agreement that both parties will agree to actually abide by. It's it's almost impossible to consider that the Americans would do that, or are even capable of thinking about doing that. This is the conundrum that Iran is in. They would like to have an agreement that stop the fighting, and they would be able to proceed normally and control the Straits of Hormuz, not in a way that was nasty to the rest of the world, but now they need to do that, have their peaceful nuclear weapons program. But they're not going to be able to. The Americans are going to, any agreement that the Americans would make that would sound like it was allowing them to do that, or sound like it was peaceful, would be precarious and would be subject to American whim. We'll break it when we want to break it. And That won't stop until the Americans have been hurt so badly that they really cannot come back into this. They really cannot break the agreement that they made.
No doubt. Thanks for that, Jim. Always appreciate you coming on. Thank you for taking your time out to join us. Jim, I know people can find you on your X page and your Substack. On the Substack, it is The Polemicist on Substack, so they should check you out. The Polemicist on Substack. On X, I always forget, but is it underscore The Polemicist, right?
It's The Polemicist underscore.
Okay, The Polemicist underscore. So people should definitely check you out. But really appreciate you coming on and joining us, especially under short notice. We're all not expecting, we're all relaxing, and then unfortunately this happened. So appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to having you back on again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Jim. Appreciate it. That was Jim Kavanagh. Always appreciate him coming on. Do check out his Substack and his and his X page. So next we've got Lieutenant Colonel Karen Katowski. I haven't made the link yet, so just watch out for it. I don't know what to do. I've never done this before where I've not made the link in time, but we're gonna have the link made, because remember I had to rush and come here, and I quickly did like 2 interviews immediately, because we're gonna continue talking about it, because strikes are still happening right now. So watch out for the page. This is why you need to have your notifications on. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, have your notifications on. And as you guys know, now I revealed to you, I am going to be in Iraq in the next day or two. And Iraq's been, your boy's in danger now. Your boy's in danger. What shall he do? And I appreciate the love and support on the chat as well. But make sure you like this video. Let's push it out there, because as I mentioned, there is a siege, a blockade on the channel, and we need to make sure you like this video to make sure you... Okay, so more breaking news. The Saudis are targeting in the Holy Karbala governor in the Husseini area, Abu Asid village, at a Husseini service guest house. I'm not an expert on Shia theology, but I believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, the Husseini service guest house is kind of like, as the Shia cleric I was speaking to was explaining this to me, so I could be wrong on this because I'm just regurgitating without having depth knowledge, but I believe it's like not a mosque, but it's like a center that's close to the mosque, but it's a very religiously affiliated center. So they're attacking essentially religious Shia holy places right now. So we're going to continue to give you the news as and when we receive it. In the meantime, guys, do me a favor. Like I said, like this video and just watch out for it, because I haven't made the link, so I'm about to make it. So there'll be like a 5-minute gap before we start, but watch out for it, because we're going to go live again. In the meantime, I do want to jump onto the space just to give people a chance to talk while I'm setting that up. In terms of this video, much love to every single one of you. Appreciate you guys joining in. Appreciate you guys listening.